So, fresh from eBay, here's a Spectra, an Astro Spectra. It's sort of a 20 quidder with luck. What is it? It's a dash mount, but it isn't. It's P25, that's the 04 bit. It's K, so it's VHF. And going further on, there's a W5 in there. So it's looking for a W5 control head. I don't know if I've got one of those at hand, but it's a fairly simple one, just with buttons on. And it's configured to have that remote through these 25-pin connectors and a long cable to the trunk. So what have we got? How can we test it? And what's its state? It says it's got a 1 meg chip in it, so that's a start. Let's go about powering it up. Well, here's 12 volts. We'll give it a bit of that. And here's a connection for a computer so we can talk to it. Look. There we go. Right, so we connect it to a PC. We've got the software running, but the radio won't be switched on because we haven't got the control head. So measures will have to be taken to sort that issue out. Even if we put a W3 control head in, it isn't going to switch it on. So we can test and read the radio. Let's just pop a 39 ohm resistor between those 2 points. Let's see if it switches on. It came on with an error. I'm using a W3 control head here, which is not correct for the radio if the display and controls don't work correctly. I powered it up just momentarily before and it reads on the software. So far so good. We can read it, we can power it up. We don't know whether it works as a radio or not, but we'll go through that. I had a quick glance at the firmware and DSP, that's really old, so that'll have to be sorted out. So, looks like it's a working radio. So, next thing to do is to force in a known good code plug, and we'll use a complete one. We'll use an SREC, which will be one off a W3 radio. So the radio will then have the code plug in for a W3 radio, even though it's a W5, missing some of the components. Well, let's go down that road and see what happens. Here we are in the ancient world of DOS and floppy disks, and this is some really old software for a previous version of a radio, but it helps us with this job. And what we do, we go F3, F4, F2. The radio went beep, that's a good sign. It's reading the current code plug from the last user. And on that floppy I popped in, that has a SREC, which includes a code plug of a known good radio. So that's done. We now go, I always forget this crazy sequence, F10, F6, and rename the file, so we'll call it old, how about that? And these are S19 files. We'll call it that. F8, F10, F6, we should read that from the radio and put it on the floppy, just so we've got something to go back to if all goes wrong. Then we select the new SREC, which it was, it's a W3, so beep beep beep. We go W3E, I think we called it, and F4. Let's read that. F10, F4 again, and F8. What's going to happen now? It's programming the radio slowly. And when this is done, due to this, the old DSP, it'll probably not be a P25 radio, but it will have become an amateur radio with the old Astro system on it. Looks success. Aha, right. So let's have a look at the display. It won't be working that well, but it's working perfectly well. So it's gone from being a bit of a white elephant to something that should be listening, let's say on 14545. Is it really? Let's find a radio that can transmit on that. System check. It works. Now whether it transmits or not is another matter. It does. So there we are. We've created an amateur radio that works on the old P25 system. Next job, to update the firmware. Now that is a challenge. I've used the magic screwdriver to remove the two screws off the top lid. That's undone. I think these are coming loose now. The screws were loose to start with, which tells me, and there's a screw missing there. That's always a worrying sign. I should think this has been looked at before by some engineers. Let's just take the bolt-on unit out, because that's what I'm going to be working on with these screws out. There's the bolt-on unit in its little tin box, and we'll have a glance in there. There's the lid off. There's the bolt-on unit. Our SREC is now stored on this. That's the code plug, etc. But the firmware lives in there, and the really old DSP is in there. So those two chips have got to come off and to be reflashed with more up-to-date firmware. Fortunately, I treat it as fortunate, the encryption unit, which plugs in there and lives in this hole, has been removed by the police force or whoever had it before, so there's no worry about being, you know, people thinking you've got an encrypted radio, because the actual encryption unit is gone. So that's, in a way, that's a blessing. So, how we're going to update this, that's the tricky bit. Okay, the tools are ready. Nice soldering station, 2 or 3 irons, plenty of bits, the job, low melting point solder, flux, and more flux, there's the clue, plenty of flux, and a 6 thou feeler gauge. That's what we need to do the job, to remove the chips anyway. Right, put some flux on. Let's try a bit of the low melting point solder. If I'm still in view on the video. There we go, bit there. Plenty of flux smoke coming off. Bit there. We'll do these while we're at it. There we go. So flooded with low melting point solder. Should we properly flooded at the ends? Yeah, that looks reasonable. Here's where the feeler gauge comes in. Pop that underneath. Making sure not to nudge anything else out of line. I may have to come off video because I can't see the job for the for the camera. There we go. Oh, there's one end up. I'd rather it not flirt up like that. I could probably hold the chip now. There we go. It's a real mess. We'll sort it out. Off to the other end. This one's an easier one. Again, under with the, I think there's a component somewhere I should avoid, yes. So, put the feeler gauge under, bong, straight off. And off. So we've got the chips removed. Board's a bit messy. So the next most important thing is the solder wick, which we'll use to clean the board for when we're ready to replace. And the most critical bit is we'll flood this with flux again, and then clean the pins gently, not bending them, and clean and clean and clean. You can't get these clean enough. And make sure they haven't gone out of alignment when we flooded the thing off the board. Then we'll go to reprogram it. And the programmer likes to have everything clean on the pins, because you can see how fine the pitch is, and we don't want any little tiny fragments of solder slowing the job up either. So there we go. Ready for the next stage. Right, the first of the chips, the DSP chip, is now in the programmer, little Chinese Mini Pro, and I select the appropriate program to go into it, and it's buried in there. It's some way into the chip, and we select program, and away it goes. This fails many a time due to not cleaning the chip properly and straightening its pins after its removal, but that one's gone in a treat. And if we just have a look down, somewhere around the middle will be the data. There we go. So it's all in there and verified, so that chip is done. Right, we program the chips, so we'll clean the board up prior to putting the chips back on. Bit of plenty of flux on here, and the good old solder wick cleans up the board. There we go. That's that. And giving that a good old dust. That's not passing my inspection, that one. Yeah, that looks reasonable. Right, so next thing will be to fit the chips. Easy one first, just to get us into gear with it. I'll just use a blob of solder paste. I think I've got some somewhere. I think that's the chip in the right position. Terrible looking iron there, let's just clean that up. It's got a little bit of solder paste on the legs. We will be going over it again when we've finished. Just do the corners. And there's a corner down there. That one's got plenty of paste on it. Well, it shouldn't drop off now. Right, it's glued on. Now we go on, just melting the paste beneath the legs. I just smeared a little bit on each leg. I don't trust that. I'll go over it with some fine solder and use this same method. You can flood it with solder and then clean it off with flux, but we'll probably end up doing that anyway. Just give it a clean off when we've finished. But that's heading in the right direction. Next thing will be a little bit of fine solder when I can find some. And that will be the DSP chip back on. Once I finish that, I need to get this camera out of the way to just finish it. Well, the chips went in. I've put the Vocon board back in the radio, put its tin cover on. The only problem I really came across was the die-cast chassis beneath there, the thread's stripped, so can't put a screw in there. Not that that's vital. And replace the screw on that top corner that seemed to go on walkabout. We'll have to go in there to do the receiver anyway, so that's not a problem. Right, it's powered up using the method that will have to be changed. It's not really saleable like that. And it's got what we got, 1446125 D for digital. Let's see if that talks to that handheld I've got over there. G6GRY testing. Oh, that worked. Make it a bit louder. G6GRY testing. Slight delay as it goes through the digitizer. And does it work the other way? G6GRY testing. That works. So we've got a working radio. It does P25. Its display looks okay. I don't think anything else about. Just have a quick tune round. Something yesterday. MP, which you can hardly hear.
They've got it for a week and a bit actually.
Where's Albert?
So they're going away, and the clean-up effect on these boards is terrific. Complete clean down.
That's Albert on his evening net. Oh, what's that? I don't know what that was. I'm not hearing anything else, but there we are. It works. Well, when we finish, that will become the on-off switch. But at the moment, it doesn't do anything. So, we need to tune the radio. I'm pretty sure it will be on frequency. We'll just have a quick check. Yeah, that's all right. And right, so the next stage will be, let's do something about using a Dodger resistor to switch it on. That's not very clever. We'll move on to that. Right, taking the two screws out of the front. I'll take this device out, put it over there for use on the next set, and we'll remove the front. A bit tricky to do while in the camera, we'll see. There we go. Yep, fallen off nicely. You can see how it's held in. There's going to be a lot of prongs that goes through into the set. So there we are. Right. Well, that resistor we had in was going between a couple of points here. I think it's pins 20 and 22. Well, there's two methods of sorting that out. There's a piece of spare real estate here on the board where you can fit a switch and drill a hole through the front here, put a switch on. One of my smarter friends said there's a better way than doing that, and he designed a little board. Here's one that's half built, a bit Blue Peter like that, and you mount that on there, and that takes data from the microphone and does the switching there for you. So no longer is a switch needed or a resistor or anything like that needed on here. There's this clever little board. I've just put the first two transistors on that one. Blue Peter like, I have one that's done here. Let's do it the other way around. That's how the little board goes on. And that one is ready to go. It's untested yet, but it only has 4 connections, 1 ground, 1 routing to the microphone, and 2 to those 2 points where we have the resistor. So let's just see how we get on with that. Right, well, I've fitted that board with the clever little circuit board added. Here's the display, there's the button. Let's see what happens when we press it. Things seem to be happening. It's testing itself, and away we go. It's working. And I've only put one thing in the menu, that's the power, high and low. So that's all we've got in there. And to switch it off, there we go. So that is a great improvement. We now have a radio that's controllable by the hand controller, switch on and offable by the hand controller, so that the radio itself could live anywhere in the vehicle, out of sight. All you need is this to control it. You can add more things to the menu, but I've just kept it simple for the time being. What to do next to get this radio as a going concern? We'll run the tuner software on the PC. We'll check the power levels. I'll be setting it 10 watts and 25 watts. And check its deviation and the deviation balance, which is important for the digital side. Then, without using the test set, without using the software, I'll just go into the test set over there. I'll choose which one I fancy, and we'll make some adjustments to the receiver to make it work better on between 144 and 146 megs. The set itself is designed to work between 146 and about 174, so it's quite broad brush. So we'll bring that down a bit and hopefully make it super sensitive on the hand bands.